Hello, welcome to Ham Radio Basics. Whether you've had your license for a while and just hadn't really gotten on the air, or you're new to ham radio and ready to make that first contact, this is the series for you. So let's see what we've got going with K5ATA Ham Radio. Okay, now you want to try to find somebody on HF. Maybe you've got your general license, or you do get that little bit of privilege in the technician area there where you want to try to find somebody on HF to talk to. It's a little bit different than what we just talked about with VHF, UHF. With HF, you need to tune around. First of all, take a look at the band plan. Make sure you're within your allotted space. And within each band plan, there are different segments for different modes of operation. So just make sure you're in the right spot. You don't want to be right at the band's edge because your transmission or your signal may actually cross over the band's edge. But get in there, and what you want to do is listen first. Tune around, find an empty frequency, listen for a few minutes because quite often you can hear one station and not another because of the way propagation works. So sit there for a few minutes, listen. If you don't hear anybody, just get on the air and say, hey, this is K5ATA is a frequency in use. Wait a few minutes or 10, 15 seconds, then ask it again because it's possible that somebody didn't hear you. Maybe you were talking while somebody else was talking that you couldn't hear that person talking. Ask that a couple times, and if you don't hear anybody, then you can go ahead and proceed with calling CQ. So how do you call CQ? First time I called CQ, I was nervous as a cat. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. 99.9% of the people in the ham radio world are extremely friendly folks, and they would love to be your first QSO, especially on the HF bands. Okay, so to call CQ, check and make sure you're on the right frequency. And I'm not actually going to call CQ, but for the purpose of demonstrating, I'll show you. Okay. Same thing as with the handy talkie or with the other radio. You're going to push the PTT button, pause for just a brief second, and the way I do it, now there's no formal rule for how you have to do it, okay, but if you think in terms of other people are tuning around the band, or with a lot of modern radios, they have band scopes that show where activity is. You want to talk long enough that they can kind of get a beat on where you are. So if they're tuning around, and they're tuning just so they're tuning. Let me change this. This isn't going. And it's like, oh, what was that? You want them to go back, and you want them to hear that. Hey, what was that sound? And then pause for a minute. Now, they're probably not going to find you on the first attempt, but they know somebody's there calling. Then you're going to wait another couple seconds, or if somebody doesn't answer you, and you're going to call CQ again. So here's the way I do it. I key up. I go CQ, 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 K5ATA, CQ, 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 Kilo 5, Alpha, Tango, Alpha, calling CQ. That's all I say. It's, 10 seconds or so long. It's long enough they'll notice it. Then I pause and wait. If somebody answers me, boom, I've got a conversation. If somebody doesn't answer me, that doesn't mean nobody's out there and the bands aren't dead. Okay? It just means maybe they hadn't found you yet. So wait a few seconds, call again. Sometimes you have to call several times before somebody falls upon your signal and you start talking. Another way to make contacts on HF is what I call pouncing. There are several tools you can use that will spot different stations. In fact, if you're calling CQ, somebody's liable to spot you, which means you're going to start showing up on different, telnet servers and spotting software that says, hey, this station, K5ATA, is at this frequency calling CQ. And so that'll kind of steer more people into your signal, where they'll start trying to come and click on you and get your station. Maybe you're in a state that not a whole lot of people have for worked all states. For example, it took me forever and a day to catch North Dakota. So I can promise you, every time I saw somebody that was a North Dakota station on a spotting software or a spotting feed, I tried to get them. Okay, so you could end up with a big pileup. Don't stress out if you get a whole bunch of people calling you. It's your pileup. Have fun, take your time, talk to each one however long you want to, and go on to the next guy. Okay, but like I said, that's the repeater identifying himself. So if I were talking, I would have to identify right there. Okay, so back to HF. So what I was saying, you can use spotting software. You can load it up. A lot of logging programs have it built into there where it says, you know, a list of different stations. You can click on that station. A lot of them have cat control or radio control. So your computer, when you click on it in the logging software, it automatically tunes your radio to that station. Don't forget, if your antenna requires tuning, tune your antenna before you transmit. You know, hit the tune button, tune it up, wait for that opportunity to call. When you hear that station, always listen first, because sometimes they may be working what's called split, where they're listening on one frequency and, you know, talking on another. But more importantly, you may only be hearing one side of a conversation. So where it sounds empty to you, somebody could actually be talking. So wait for a minute until you hear the station. If you don't hear that station, then you probably can't work that station. But, you know, hang around for a few minutes. Maybe they're just not getting through. Maybe it's, you know, for some reason or another. Sit and listen. Once you hear them call, they're going to say something along the lines of, you know, whatever their call sign is, ABC123 QRZ, or something like that, saying, who's next? Just say your call sign. Now, if there's a big pile up there, expect to have to try several times. Okay? But remember, when you say your call sign, you don't necessarily want to say it 8 or 10 times. There will be a lot of people out there who really want that station, and they're going to call it, you know, several times during that. Then there'll also be people who kind of have a little strategy to it. Some of them try to jump on the microphone. As soon as he says QRZ, they're like, boom, K5ATA, trying to get in there first, hoping they'll hear him. Some people wait until it sounds like it's a lull of discussion or people calling, and then they try to get theirs to get through. You're going to have to play with what style you like. Okay, but as soon as he takes somebody else's call, that's it. Don't step on him. Don't keep transmitting. Let him finish that call. Just have good working, you know, radio etiquette. Let that call finish and go from there. Okay, you can also work Morse Code on HF. If you know Morse Code, great. You can talk around the world with not a lot of power. But I will go ahead and tell you, most of us can send Morse Code faster than we can copy Morse Code. So if you're going to send CQ, it's kind of the same principle as working phone or voice on HF. You want to send it at the speed that you can copy. Don't send it, you know, here's my practice oscillator. My Morse code's a little rusty. Okay, so I'm not going to send it. Okay, I'm not going to send it that fast, because I know if somebody comes back to me at that speed, I'm done. Stick a fork in me. I have no idea what they just said, because I can't copy that fast. Okay, so send it at the speed at which you're comfortable sending. And don't be afraid if they're sending too fast to say, you know, hey, can you send it slower? I'll post on my website a list of the common Q codes. One of those is to send more slowly. Okay, another mode, and some of these modes have been around for a while. I say mode, but there's several modes that fall within one category, are HF digital modes. Now, there are a bunch of them. I'll put a link on my website, goodgamehamradio.com. I'll put a link on there which has some more information about the different modes and stuff like that. But basically, that's a way to use your HF radio with your computer to communicate with other stations by typing, using your keyboard. You don't have to talk with your voice. You don't have to send Morse code. It does take, obviously, a computer. It takes a radio. And it usually has to have some kind of an interface, a sound card interface of some sort to go between the radio and the computer. So digital modes, like I said, those vary depending on the different style. I'll start building on the website I'll have pictures of the different kinds of signals so you can kind of tell what kind it is. Different software are used for different modes sometimes. WSJTX for FTA and stuff like that. FLDigi is one of them. It is a little bit more of a learning curve to get in on that one, but it can be really rewarding. You can work around the world. You can hear some really weak signals out there and work those stations as well. Okay, and that is how you make your first contact, calling CQ or responding to a CQ or pouncing on your HF bands. So that covers on sideband, which is your voice, commonly called phone, CW or Morse Code, and HF digital. Like I said, though, HF digital does have a little bit more of a learning curve to it. So, kind of take a look at it, get into it. There's a whole lot to get into there, but it can be a lot of fun. So any questions, any comments, comment below. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe. We would appreciate it. It does help us out. Y'all take care, and we will see you on the air. 7-3.